The hum was the first thing Sergeant Avi Cohen noticed. Not the rhythmic clack-clack of the train wheels on the tracks, a sound that had become the lullaby of his deployment in the South. This was different. A high, thin whine, like a million angry hornets swarming in the vast, inky blackness of the Negev desert. He shifted in his seat inside the armored escort car, his Taver rifle resting across his lap. Outside, the moonless night of August 13, 2025, offered no comfort, just an endless expanse of sand and shadow. "You hear that, Yossi?" he murmured to the private, staring blankly out the reinforced window. Ichiu, Yossi, a kid barely 19 with eyes that still held a flicker of life that hadn't yet been extinguished by the constant tension, pulled an earbud out. "Hear what, Sarge?" Before Avi could answer, the humming became a chorus of screams. The sky tore open. From Avi's vantage point, it looked as if the stars themselves had decided to fall. Dozens of small, dark shapes plummeted from the heavens, their descent unnervingly silent for a moment before their terminal dive began. They weren't falling randomly. They were aiming. The first impact was a deafening crump that shook the half-mile-long train from locomotive to final car. Avi was thrown against the bulkhead. A split second later, the world outside his window turned into a sun. A colossal fireball erupted from the fuel tankers near the front, a roiling, liquid orange blossom that climbed 300 feet into the air, momentarily turning night into a hellish day. The heat slammed against their armored car like a physical blow, the metal groaning in protest. "Drones! Suicide drones!" Someone screamed over the intercom, the voice cracking with panic. Then the hits came closer. Another drone, and another. One struck the car directly in front of them. The explosion was a physical concussion, a fist of God that ripped through steel. The armored plating designed to stop bullets and shrapnel peeled back like a tin can. The inside of Avi's car was filled with the screams of the men in the next carriage, screams that were cut short with terrifying finality. Shrapnel, superheated and traveling faster than a rifle bullet, peppered their own hull, sounding like a hailstorm of sledgehammers. The lights flickered and died, plunging them into a red-tinged darkness illuminated only by the raging inferno outside. Avi's ears rang. His vision swam. He tasted copper. "Status report," he yelled, his voice hoarse. "Anyone hit?" A groan to his left. A shaky, "I'm okay," from the back. The train had ground to a screeching metallic halt, its spine broken, its lifeblood of fuel now feeding a pyre that could be seen from orbit. They were a sitting duck, a burning, bleeding duck. And the wolves were coming. Miles away, hidden in a dusty olive grove, Jamal gripped the handlebars of his motorcycle, the engine a low growl beneath him. The fireball on the horizon was his signal. It was more magnificent than he had ever imagined, a testament to their ingenuity, their faith, their righteous fury. He felt a surge of elation, a righteous fire in his own chest that mirrored the one on the tracks. "Go! For God! For victory!" the squad leader yelled, his voice barely audible over the thrum of 30 engines. They burst from the cover of the trees, a wave of 60 fighters, 2 to a bike, a cloud of dust and defiance against the desert floor. Jamal's heart hammered against his ribs, a drumbeat of adrenaline and zeal. The wind whipped at his face as they accelerated to over 50 miles an hour, the burning train growing larger and larger in his sights. This was the moment he had trained for, dreamed of. They were no longer the hunted, cowering in tunnels. Tonight, they were the hunters. He could see the wreckage now. The mangled cars, the twisted rails glowing cherry red. Figures were stumbling out of the intact carriages, Israeli soldiers dazed and disoriented. His partner on the back of the bike, Omar, unslung his AK-74 and let out a guttural cry. The night erupted in a new kind of sound, the crackle of automatic rifle fire and the signature whoosh-bang of an RPG leaving its tube. Jamal weaved the bike through the chaos, firing his own rifle one-handed at the shadowy figures trying to form a defensive line. Their mission was clear: overwhelm the survivors, capture hostages for leverage, and seize the prize. the gleaming high-tech weapons systems nestled in the secure cars. Millions of dollars worth of technology that would turn the tide. They reached the train in under 3 minutes. Jamal skidded his bike to a halt, leaping off before it had even stopped moving. He and Omar took cover behind a crippled wheel set, the heat from the burning cars blistering their faces. "They're broken," Omar yelled over the din. "Move up, secure the weapons cars." Jamal saw it too. The Israeli response was scattered, confused. They had the element of surprise, the perfect plan. He chambered a fresh round, a predator's grin spreading across his face. Victory was not just possible, it was here. He could taste it in the smoke-filled air. He didn't know, couldn't possibly know, that high above the maelstrom, 50 pairs of invisible thermal eyes were watching his every move, and that the ground beneath his feet was already being mapped for annihilation. The price for this fleeting taste of victory was about to be levied, and it would be paid in blood and fire. The first encrypted alerts hit the pit, the underground command center in Tel Aviv, less than 4 minutes after the first drone struck. General Ilara Vance stood before the main holodisplay, her face a mask of cold fury. Numbers and symbols cascaded down the screen, painting a picture of catastrophic failure. Train 734, crippled, 22 cars, 320 tons fuel, critical loss, 40 souls, status unknown, and the number that made her blood run cold, $50 million, precision-guided systems, compromised. "Talk to me, Ben," she said, her voice dangerously quiet. She didn't turn to face her chief intelligence analyst. Her eyes were locked on the thermal satellite feed showing the train as a white-hot scar on the dark desert. "Ma'am, the attack was two-pronged. A drone swarm followed by a ground assault. Approximately 30 motorcycles, 60 combatants. They're on the train now, overwhelming the guard detail." Ben's fingers flew across his console. "We have 50 reconnaissance UAVs en route. First assets should be on station in 6 minutes. 6 minutes is an eternity," Ilara snapped. "They're not just destroying, they're looting. Get me eyes on their exfil routes. I want to know where they're taking my weapons." The next 11 minutes were the most tense of Ilara's career. The screens came alive with new feeds, crystal clear, high-resolution thermal video from the newly arrived drones. The images were chillingly precise. They could see the Hamas fighters dragging crates from the train cars. They could see them herding dazed, wounded Israeli soldiers, their hands bound. They were taking hostages. "There," Ben said, highlighting a section of the screen. "They're moving east, toward the tunnel network. 6 distinct entry points all within 800 yards of civilian structures." Ilara stared at the screen, her mind a whirlwind of calculations. Hesitation meant those weapons and those soldiers would disappear into the labyrinth beneath Gaza, fueling months of future attacks. A conventional airstrike meant unacceptable civilian casualties and the destruction of the very weapons she needed to recover. "The cost of inaction is higher," she said, more to herself than to anyone else. She straightened, her decision made. The cold fury had been replaced by a chilling resolve. "Authorize Operation Iron Hounds, full deployment. I want that entire network not just sealed, but sterilized, and I want my soldiers back." Her command, Iron Hounds Deploy, was a single keystroke, but it unleashed a sleeping giant. From bases across the south, the ground began to tremble. 45 Namer-armored personnel carriers, their heavy treads churning asphalt, rolled into the pre-dawn gloom. 18 Merkava 4 tanks, the pride of the IDF, joined them, their cannons silent but menacing. It was an entire combat brigade, 5,000 of Israel's most elite soldiers moving as one silent steel beast. Among them was Staff Sergeant Kyle, his hand resting on the neck of Loki, a Belgian Malinois whose vest was bristling with more tech than the average soldier. A 4K camera over its head, infrared sensors, a biometric tracker. Loki whined softly, sensing the tension in the air. Kale stroked the dog's head, his own heart a steady, practiced drum. His world was the dark, the tight spaces, the places no man wanted to go. He and Loki were a vanguard, the tip of a very sharp spear. Their convoy halted miles from the border, a ghost in the shadows. Engines died, replaced by the hum of electronics and the quiet clicks of weapons being checked. Kyle looked up. He couldn't see them, but he knew they were there. The drones, the satellites, all feeding data to the tablet strapped to his wrist. On it, a schematic began to form, a blueprint of the enemy's subterranean world, mapped in real time by Loki and his 59 canine brethren who were already being prepped for deployment. They were about to descend into hell, armed with a god's eye view. Deep underground, the mood was euphoric. Jamal helped haul a heavy crate marked with Hebrew lettering into a vast, cavernous chamber. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth, gunpowder, and sweat. His comrades were cheering, embracing, praising God for their stunning victory. The captured weapons were being stacked against a wall, a treasure trove of death. In a separate guarded alcove, the Israeli hostages sat slumped against the wall, their faces pale with shock and fear. Jamal saw Avi among them, his sergeant's stripes visible on his torn and grimy uniform. Their eyes met for a fleeting second. Jamal saw no fear in the man's eyes, only a cold, burning defiance. It unnerved him. "A great victory," said Omar, clapping him on the shoulder, "but this was too easy. They will not let this stand." Omar was a veteran of 2 wars, his face a roadmap of hard-earned caution. "Let them come," Jamal scoffed, puffed up with the success of the raid. "We are in our fortress. They can't touch us here. We will bleed them dry if they dare to enter." He could not have been more wrong. The attack began not with a bomb, but with a shudder. A low, deep vibration that ran through the packed earth floor. The bare bulbs hanging from the ceiling flickered. Then another, stronger tremor. A fine dust began to rain down from the ceiling. Above ground, the first phase was already over. Hundreds of high-explosive grenades had obliterated the tunnel entrances, catching the surface guards completely by surprise. Now came the loitering munitions, the bunker buster drones. Guided by the real-time maps being generated by Loki and the other K9 scouts who had slipped silently into the network's periphery, these machines weren't just bombing an area. They were hunting specific targets. One of the drones, its AI brain fed the exact coordinates of the command chamber, dove from 10,000 feet. It carried a specialized shaped charge warhead. When it struck the earth 90 feet above Jamal's head, it didn't just explode. The warhead funneled the blast into a jet of molten copper, a plasma lance traveling at 30,000 feet per second. The ceiling of the command chamber, 3 feet of reinforced concrete, vanished in a flash of incandescent light. The commanders, the radios, the entire nerve center of the operation was vaporized in a millisecond. For Jamal and the others in the main cavern, it felt like the apocalypse. A thunderous roar ripped through the tunnels. The entire structure groaned and a massive section of the ceiling collapsed, crushing a stack of the newly stolen RPGs. The secondary explosions were catastrophic, a chain reaction of detonations that turned the chamber into a maelstrom of shrapnel and fire. The lights went out for good. Panic erupted. Men screamed in the darkness, their triumphant cheers replaced by cries of terror and pain. They were blind, deafened, and trapped. Jamal scrambled for his rifle, his euphoria turned to primal fear. Omar was right. This had been too easy. It was a trap. And now, the hunters were coming down the throat of the beast. In the green-hued world of Kale's night vision goggles, the chaos was a perfectly orchestrated symphony of destruction. He and his team poured into the tunnel entrance, Loki leading the way, a silent predator. The enemy was exactly where the data said they would be. They were not fighting an army. They were performing an extermination. The tunnels became a meat grinder. Kale and his squad moved with a terrifying efficiency that was more machine than man. Every corner, every chamber was a data point on their heads-up displays, relayed from the K9 scouts and seismic sensors. They didn't have to guess where the enemy was. They knew. Target, left corridor, 3 hostiles, 15 meters. The voice of their network controller crackled in Cale's earpiece, calm and dispassionate. Cale didn't hesitate. He tossed a flashbang, the blast momentarily washing out his night vision. He pushed forward into the blinding light, his rifle spitting 3-round bursts. The targets fell before they even knew they were under attack. The air was a choking mix of cordite, dust, and the metallic tang of blood. They were ghosts, hunting in a concrete tomb of their enemy's own making. In the makeshift prison cell, Avi heard the controlled, rhythmic gunfire getting closer. It was different from the wild, panicked shooting of the Hamas fighters. This was the sound of professionals at work. Hope, a dangerous and fragile thing, flickered in his chest. The guards outside his cell were shouting, their voices laced with terror. They were being hunted, cornered. He saw his chance. One of the younger guards, his face a mask of fear, fumbled with his rifle. Avi surged forward, slamming his shoulder into the man's chest and driving him back against the wall. He grabbed the rifle, the motion fluid and instinctual from years of training. The other guards turned, but it was too late. A burst of green-tinged light erupted from the corridor behind them. Kyle's team. The guards dropped without a sound. Cale saw the Israeli uniform on the man holding the AK-74. "IDF, hold your fire," he yelled. Avi lowered the weapon, his body trembling with adrenaline. "Sergeant Avi Cohen, there are other hostages, 10 of us." "We know," Cale said, his voice calm as he scanned the area. "We're getting you out." The sweep was brutal and swift. The remaining Hamas fighters, disoriented and cut off from their command, were either eliminated in short, vicious firefights or surrendered in a state of shock. Jamal found himself backed into a dead-end storage tunnel, the ammunition for his rifle long spent. The sounds of the assault, the methodical gunfire, the Hebrew commands, closed in on him. His grand victory had lasted less than an hour. He dropped his empty rifle as the green eyes of the Israeli soldiers appeared at the end of the corridor. There was no hatred in their advance, no rage, just a cold, calculated finality. He had been a problem, and they were the solution. By the time the first rays of the sun crested the horizon, the battle was over. Operation Iron Hounds had been a devastating success. Cale stood near a collapsed tunnel entrance, the dust settling around him. Loki sat faithfully at his side, panting softly. The freed hostages, Avi among them, were being led to armored ambulances. The stolen weapons were recovered, stacked, and accounted for. From Alara's command center, the final tallies filled the screen. Over 1,000 militants neutralized or captured. Dozens of hostages freed. 12 miles of tunnel network permanently destroyed. A 15-year project erased from the map in under 2 hours. It was a victory of overwhelming, staggering proportions. But Alara felt no joy, only the grim satisfaction of a necessary, brutal task completed. She watched the live feed of Avi, his face grimy but his eyes clear, as he took a long drink of water. She had gotten her soldiers back. That was the only victory that mattered. As the sun climbed higher, it illuminated the scene of the initial ambush. The train was a blackened, skeletal wreck, a monument to a gamble that had gone catastrophically wrong. The bait had been taken, and the trap had sprung with mathematical certainty. For Israel, it was a brutal lesson relearned and a stark warning issued in smoke and steel. For Hamas, it was the ruin of a generation of fighters and the destruction of their most prized sanctuary. The desert, which had witnessed their fleeting triumph at 0417 a.m., was now the silent witness to their utter annihilation. This story, while fictional, serves as a powerful illustration of a timeless military and strategic truth. Overreach is the father of destruction. Hamas's initial success was born of audacity and surprise, but it blinded them to the nature of their opponent. They mistook a successful tactic for a winning strategy, failing to comprehend that in modern warfare, the battle is often won or lost before the first shot is even fired. It's won in the silent realms of data collection, satellite surveillance, real-time intelligence analysis, and technological superiority. The true fortress is not one built of concrete and earth, but of information and the will to use it decisively. Hubris, the belief that your fortress is impenetrable and your plan is perfect, is the most critical vulnerability of all, and it is an invitation for an opponent to turn that strength into a tomb. What are your thoughts on this balance between audacious tactics and overwhelming strategic response? Could Hamas have succeeded with a different plan, or was the outcome inevitable? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the complexities of modern conflict.